Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to another Chief Delegate meeting. This is meeting number 15, and it is Thursday, January 27th. Aaron, take it away. What you got for us?
The working groups have kind of taken priority over most things, but like I mentioned last week, I've started to shift resources back onto our projects. It's just these papers that are going to be released due to the work with the working groups. They're going to impact everything. Like, we're writing stuff in the blue papers that'll impact the account creation stuff we're even talking about today. On one hand, I have this thing that I'm like, okay, we didn't have a defined process to move forward with and give a global solution. So I'm going to propose in Eden to build this thing for Anchor to help with onboarding. And now on the other hand, I have this blue paper written that has another solution that is more widely available for all networks and all wallets and all this other stuff. It's obviously a much bigger project, but we just don't know how all of this stuff's going to be prioritized. So, and that's going to be up to the community. I hope up to this group is like, maybe we can talk about some of that stuff once everything's presented, as to how it impacts EOS and how it impacts Eden and how it impacts the other systems we participate in. So I'm excited for that to be done. I'm tired. It's been an adventure these past couple months since we've all started in Eden. And I mean, I think you can see that through all of from the day we joined to where we all are as individuals now, and so many other people in the community have similar stories. This place is crazy. I love it.
I'm glad that this is what does it for you, because if we didn't have you pinned to your screen 24 hours a day, where would we be, really?
Right. Just need a little bit less of it. Like, the intensity cannot keep up with the pace that we've all been flying at, or at least I know I've been going at. So
your service is commendable. Jesse, what do you got for us this week?
Hey everyone. I don't have anything new to present this week, but we did come out with the infographic, the EOS DApp ecosystem. This will be a work in progress. Yeah, we're taking feedback. Like, we want the details. We want to get this right. And we are doing research. Like, we are trying to get this as good as possible. So just, send us a message. That'd be great. So we're recording this on January 27th. We're almost at the end of the month. I'm very excited for the end of the month because that's when all the hives are going to turn in their work that they've done, their bounties that they've done. And we're going to be going through that. I'm going to be making a global newsletter. So I'll have a lot more stuff next week.
Chris, you're next on my screen. What you been up to?
Not much on the BP transparency bit. Some progress on another initiative, a larger project that's going to be hopefully announced in a month or so, or less. Actually, could be less now. I can't say much because it's not announced, so I don't want to give it away. Kind of don't really have anything else to add.
John, how are things over in your Violet Garden and Clarianos and the future?
Good. Been writing some contract stuff, which has been fun. Learning a few things, and given that I'm working with Clarion, it's pretty cool being able to get direct connections to the guys that built the damn thing. So it's pretty neat. As far as like updates though, I haven't got any public ones really, but yeah, just been chugging away at Clarion stuff.
And Randall.
So we are working very hard with the platform development. I was able to get my crew and Lucas' crew together. So now we started talking about how we can implement port to help with how we will onboard users onto your support the sign-in process. We just finished writing the code for our reward system, so that is actually completed. We are basically doing the best that we can to get some of these tools available so that we can have a platform where people can get incentivized, rewarded, and use the algorithm that we've built. And I was able to get in contact with Michael O'Sullivan. Shout out to him. He wants us to implement an AI that can also help with the information that we are presenting to the community, because there has to be a way that there is no bias. And I think that's also something that we're going to be working on. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, as for me, getting involved in the ENF and just a lot to process and just getting up to speed. Feeling pretty good now. I promised I would send out one recognition grant. It's going to go out to Lenny for his work doing summaries. I haven't decided how much I want to send yet, but it'll be nice. I know there's some talk about doing some sort of recurring meetings. So if people want to petition me for help with budget on any of that, feel free to reach out. My Telegram is open. Given that I'm essentially employed by the ENF now and receiving, I mean, I'm getting paid from the network essentially now for my work with the ENF. So it kind of makes my budget with, like, I would rather just redirect it to your projects and other people that can use it in the network that are not getting paid a sufficient amount for their contributions. So
were you on the fireside chat yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of what Dogman said?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of referencing, because he was alluding to a conversation that happened on that all delegate call. As far as I understand, he's proposing kind of, it's like he and Chuck McDonald, I know, have been doing a lot of thinking in this domain. And the idea is to kind of take regular meetings with delegates or anyone from the Eden community that wants to show up and participate, and use a consortium polling mechanism in some way to arrive at like topics that they want to cover, and just try to do like a weekly thing, similar to what Eden 2.0 is going to be, and use it to recognize what people are contributing on a weekly basis. They're kind of like taking the attitude of, well, let's not wait for 2.0 to just start getting together and using the consensus process for whatever, and I support the idea of, it was a cool term I think Chuck came up with, which is fractal forums. The idea of using the process to identify valuable ideas, valuable topics. And I'm all for just experimenting with the process. And if we can get people that want to show up and do it, awesome. That's the main thing I see holding us back, is just limited human bandwidth right now. There's so many people that have so many other engagements to attend to within the EOS community. And then if they're not employed in EOS, then they're probably working a full-time job or dealing with other stuff. And so there's just, when an official quote unquote election is called, it tends to pull in more people because there's all that energy directed at a single point in time for everyone to show up. I'm willing to contribute, like I said, from my budget to that process. If people want to get together and experiment with using fractal, style governance to achieve any outcome that they want. I'd love to watch. I'd love to see what happens. So, well, that's my update and a bit more. We had a few topics we wanted to cover. The first among them was this idea. I haven't read James Mart's opinion piece that he wrote, I guess, on exchange BP's voting and the merits of that.
Pull it up, Jamie.
I'm not sure what other alternatives the exchanges have. And so
don't vote. That's what Upbit does. Upbit has 135 million EOS in their cold wallet. They don't vote with it.
They don't vote.
Right.
Also, they are not allowed to vote with users tokens.
It's not clear, but they definitely, I mean, so here's the question. Why would why would it be politically, like, what's the reasoning? Why would the government have anything against it? What's the problem? Maybe because it's not ethical.
Right. All right. Well, is that an actual law, Chris?
It's not that it's a law. My understanding is that they want to have a good relationship with the government and the regulators so they can have a thriving business. And because crypto is such a questionable emerging thing as it is, that they want to not do things that are questionably not ethical. So is it questionably unethical to vote on behalf of customers' tokens who've never actually opted in to them doing so? And not even just voting, becoming a block producer and then voting for yourself to collect inflation from the network and trading those tokens with other exchanges that do the exact same thing. I mean, the ethical questions kind of multiply when you start stacking them on top of each other.
Well, I think anytime the exchange performs an action that doesn't make them solvent anymore in that moment should have some sort of asterisk, or the user should have to opt in, or that some sort of restriction on that. But on another layer as well, the behavior of, again, tracking what you owe to someone based on a centralized database kind of thing, and something that can mount Gox is reckless already. But like, what stops Binance or whatever exchange from mount Goxing? And like, how the hell do we move away from this practice? Yeah, well, like bullish, or moving towards decentralized exchanges. So
yeah, so John, I think that the thing is the system has to give more yield to the token holders to prevent these type of things from happening.
But it's still a centralized exchange. Like,
yeah, I think
so was bullish.
Yeah, Randall, your point is that there needs to be a grewer incentive for token holders to not want to store their tokens on an exchange. But the Mount Goxing, the thing is crypto is so, I mean, we have like amnesia of the past. Most people in crypto weren't around during Mount Gox. And the lesson for Mount Gox is not your keys, not your tokens. So like self-custody, but there hasn't been a big enough recent Mount Gox. Like there was Quadriga CX in Canada, and that guy, passed away in India with the keys to the 100 and whatever million he had, right? Like people just, I don't know. It's like you kind of get what you deserve, unfortunately. And EOS kind of, unfortunately, in my view, is we're kind of getting what we deserve. Like this network has not been thriving. And my view is that a lot of that is to do with the vampiric nature of the backbone, which are the BPs who are collecting the inflation, and the fact that great BPs have not been rewarded. And Aaron's here, like he's had to, I mean, you could speak for yourself, but I'm sure it's been super difficult for you to try to maintain funding and keep your BP in a paid position. And you see guys like EOS Costa Rica keeps coming up. Those guys do so much in the ecosystem, and they aren't in a paid spot right now. The EOS, the microloan, right? They were using part of their BP reward. Now this is a questionable one, but they were using that reward to help fund legal bills for people who are arrested in Venezuela using EOS as a currency. Like that's still, to me, using network inflation to help promote this ecosystem. So it's like, I don't know, like the people who argue that everything's okay and this is fine the way it is, I don't understand their view that like, it's just like, it's almost like you don't want to hear that it's not good because you've got so much in EOS. It's like, that's FUD. That's not going to pump my price. Just rah. Like you got to like be a little bit more objective about what's good and bad. And maybe it hurts a bit to change the status quo and how DPoS is, but the long-term gain is hopefully will outweigh the short-term pain.
I mean, to kind of jump back to where you mentioned gray mass, it's like I joined Eden because BP, like we weren't well enough positioned as a BP to do the things we think need to be done, add that value you're talking about. I think that my attention specifically has started to align more with block producers just produce blocks now that new methods are coming online to create value. And I mean, along that same line of thinking, maybe the solution is that once all of these systems that come online, whether it be Pomelo, ENF grants, or any other method that comes up, is just to start reducing BP pay so that it's not attractive to exchanges. Like, let's just give them enough to operate the network and have people to be able to do that, and then have the value creation activities coming from somewhere else that's not abusable in quotes, because I don't even know if it's abuse at this point. Even back in the days when I was in Steam, and Steam, for reference, was not companies as block producers, it was people. So like I, as Jesta at that time, I was a BP, just me as an individual. It was no entities. Well, there were a few, but anyways. But even back then, there was a large push to, hey, BPs should just be BPs. Like we shouldn't muddy the water because it's really hard to justify the value add that a BP brings. And I think originally I was against that throughout my time in Steam because I was a BP, because I was adding value. I was building wallets and tools and trying to bring new social media interfaces to Steam. And I was against that. But I think over the years now, maybe I'm starting to see that it's possible to go that route. It's not that exchange BPs are a problem. It's that we expect more of BPs than realistically we should. We just didn't have an alternative.
Great point.
Personally, I think it's like these aren't mutually exclusive. Like it's not like it's either BPs only do infrastructure or they only do everything. Like why can't, like I think having the ENF is absolutely key, and there's no argument for me that they shouldn't exist and that entity shouldn't exist. But that doesn't mean we still can't have BPs that are part of the community and give back.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't mean we can't have.
So Chris, so I think what would happen is they will have the choice, right? The choice of doing extra, but we have to have like a fundamental agreement that BPs just produces blocks, and this is how much we are going to give them for that, right? And then if you want to do more, kudos to you.
Yeah, and then you go through Eden and you go through these other things if you want to do more.
Or the BPs are just held accountable for spending their reward from being a BP properly. So that can be done if there were a body, a committee that was formed, almost like the OIG in WAX, and that body kept tabs and formed relationships with participating BPs. And if those BPs are willing to disclose enough of their financial information to demonstrate that, hey, look, here's what we got and here's how we spent it. We've got labor, we've got infrastructure, and here's a project that we're investing in. Here's some marketing we did. If that came, okay, fine, great. To me, that's like, that would be in my perfect world would be all the VPs disclosing what they did and doing good things with those funds. But right now they could never do that because they take the reward and they buy votes with it.
The OIG, the only reason the OIG works is because there is a massive stakeholder backing that. The WAX team has a huge amount of tokens and created the OIG to kind of act as a body to help them not directly influence governance, but have a body of voting power that instilled their values. So we could potentially do that within EOS. I mean, the WAX team has a significant amount of tokens. It is more than anybody on EOS. I think the WAX team has more than 10%. Like I'm confident in that. In EOS, the EOS ecosystem, nobody has more than 10%, basically. If I am a block producer and I'm also a value creator, if the value creation, if that can be funded elsewhere, then I, as a BP, would be willing to take a reduction in BP pay to the point as to where it covers my operational costs and staff and that kind of things. But I don't need to depend on that to build things like Anchor. Telos has a model that kind of does this. The amount of BP pay goes up and down depending on the price of Telos to try to give each BP a set amount of funding per month. That's not super great for teams like mine who depend on BP rewards to create value. But it makes, I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see the same type of exchanges engaging in that way, is because it's a designated amount.
Yeah, Telos did a few things that since I've become a part of the Telos Foundation, I've read their TBNOA, which is their Telos block producer operating agreement, I think. So they have the top 21 all get the same pay. So it doesn't go up as you go up the ranks. So that reduces the incentive to want to pay for votes, to move yourself up to get more pay. The 30 standby producers also all get the same. So it's 21 get the same, then 30 below that get half of that amount, but it's all the same. So again, no incentive to move yourself up. The 21st block producer is rotated out randomly. I believe it's random with the 30 below. So all standby producers get tested. So that removes the sock puppets who don't have any infrastructure. So that's better. And then, the other thing they do, it's interesting, is they ensure that you vote for 30 BPs. And so you lose it's inversely weighted. So if you don't vote for the full 30, you lose the power of your vote. So it encourages a broad distribution of votes as well.
I think WAX is similar in the pay structure, but it has the completely different thing living on top of it. The OIG.
Cool. I'm going to suggest we move on to another topic now, unless anyone else has anything they want to add to that before we do.
Thanks, James, for your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Way to go, James. Causing fights. No, just kidding. Real quickly, just to comment on the lawyers and the legal opinion. Someone want to update where that's at?
Yeah, so we had a meeting before the holidays, and they told us that we need to wait after the holidays, and then I believe it was like 2 to 3 weeks. We are still in contact, so if anyone's wondering about like how a legal entity would work with a set of chief delegates like us. We're still pursuing that. Just the point I want to say, we're still pursuing that. We've asked them to write us an opinion letter, and they're working on that. So we'll have updates with that hopefully soon.
Great. I will add that because we are still pursuing our promise to have some sort of like a way to form an organization that the next chief delegates can utilize to make decisions. We are hoping that Dan will follow through with the bylaws that he said he was going to write for Eden 1.0, because we want to know his thought process. So hopefully he will give us like a draft or so that we can look at. If you
I would say doubtful, Randall. I believe the bylaws will be about Eden 2.0, if I were to guess.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe if not bylaws for 1.0, then at least a rationale for why 2.0 mitigates the need for bylaws as would be needed in 1.0. So, and then we could know by inverse what the bylaws of 1.0 should be based on what 2.0 is solving. That'd be kind of fun. Besides that, we're going to touch briefly on the naming confusion and try to disambiguate all the stuff that's going on with EOS.io, Mandel, EOS.
Sorry, Lovejoy, wasn't there a topic about that 1.0 was still going to happen? And that sounded like a good segue.
That's still on the list here. That was a good segue. You're right. So yeah, Eden 1.0, does it coexist? Will it coexist with 2.0? What is the intent there, and how would it coexist? Anyone want to share any thoughts on that matter?
We need to stop calling this Eden 1.0. This is just Eden now. What comes out tomorrow has a new name, and it's not Eden 2.0. That is something new that's coming out, and this is still Eden, for better or worse. But we have a treasury. The treasury is still, like, we've only tapped into a fraction of it so far. So the next people who get elected will have their treasury, just like we all have today. But the big point of contention, I think, that may require more funding is that Eden still needs a development team. I know my excitement level is going to drop drastically if nobody is improving this. This system needs to evolve. We originally thought when Eden 2.0 was starting to be talked about that this system would evolve. Like, this was the evolution of the system. Turns out that's not true. There's just a new thing coming, and that leaves Eden in just this undefined state with no development team, no roadmap.
I guess what we would do is, as chief delegates, we have to come together and see who we can hire to maintain the code and how we can move forward, just in case if the clearing team cannot do this, because we have developers out there, right?
I'd love to see this turn into more of less focus on funding and more focus on leadership. I think that this process, the Eden 1.0 process, may end up being superior for leadership qualities, whereas 2.0 sounds like it's all monetary incentive, and it's not going to result in good leadership. It'll result in good salesmanship. I don't know, there's a word here.
If you have good leaders in Eden 1.0, what exactly would they lead?
Whatever. I mean, when this process first started, I imagined you could run a blockchain with this process. Like, this group could pick VPs for a different chain. I'm not saying for EOS specifically, because we're in a stake-weighted ecosystem, but this political playoff process could replace DPoS.
Yeah. For the selecting the ENF people, don't forget, there's a lot of people who didn't really, like Eve himself could participate, Zach can participate, we all can participate. Like, there's a lot of people who are part of Eden who don't participate. If they knew that the outcome of an election was actually to actually steer this chain, I think you'd see a lot more high quality folks come to the table and present high quality pitches. And if we trust this process, then the people who end up at the top will be quality people who can appoint a very quality ENF, which probably be the same people we currently have in the ENF. I'm not at all suggesting that needs to change, but then how they got there would be a lot more legitimate in my view.
And that's part of the reason to prove this process out is, I mean, you've even seen people say as much, is like, eventually the organizations that exist that are funded by the network should be run through some election process. that seems like an Eden 1 process. And from everything I know of Eden 2, I don't think that process works for electing leadership. We'll see. I mean, again, I don't know a whole lot, but it seems really focused on money and building up smaller communities.
Let's suspend our commentary, I guess, until we have more information, because we're kind of just in endless cycles of speculation now.
Right.
And we had a couple more topics that we wanted to touch on. One is just real quick, if we could clear up any of the naming confusion issues. Maybe Aaron, you're probably best positioned to handle that one.
Sure. The names that we were talking about for tomorrow, I mean, that is the Eden, whatever Eden 2.0, which we've all been calling it, is going to be named. It's this new process. That name will come out from Dan, I'm assuming tomorrow. The other naming that's going on is what EOS.io, the technology platform, not the blockchain, but like the whole platform that Bio, Wax, Telos, EOS, Proton, UX, all of these blockchains operate using, that is being talked about and being renamed by the EOS.io Plus group right now. It's coming up with the new branding, new name, building an organization to help facilitate the collaboration of the various chains that depend on this technology. And that is subject to be renamed. There's a lot of confusion, and that's part of why the renaming is so important, because a lot of people think we're renaming EOS, whether that be the blockchain or the token. And while that may happen in the future, I am not aware of any plans right now of anyone actually working on renaming anything EOS related, the blockchain and the token.
Well, in the first recording of the EOS.io Plus group, Eve did say that EOS may change its name for business purposes.
Yeah.
Do you know if does the EOS name, is it connected to the IP issue, or is it just the symbol the name is also?
I think so.
This is tangled up with the IP.
Yeah, all the trademarks were around both EOS, the EOS logo, EOS.io, the EOS.io logo, bunch of Block 1 related assets.
I recently rewatched the Brock Pierce, Michael Sullivan interview, and I'm so happy that Michael asked this question, which was, why does Bullish have the EOS IP? And Brock's answer was, well, sometimes we don't think things through good enough.
It adds value to Bullish.
Yeah.
So if they want to get the maximum SPAC price or however that works, it just adds to one of their assets. Is it rational? Does it make sense to the network and everyone else involved? Nope, probably not. I think that's probably Brock's point.
Yeah.
Was it correct for Block 1 to make that decision?
They own it, technically.
Yeah, so 4 billion gets raised on the name and the logo of EOS. And then the trademarks of that logo and the name is now just being given to a company that doesn't really care about the chain and is, an exchange that just happens to be using the blockchain, and that's about it. I don't know. Maybe there's something on the other side that I'm not appreciating it, but yeah, from that side, it's a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, I think John just definitely described the community sentiment pretty well there. But there was
anyway.
Yeah.
Blue papers. Did you want to touch on the blue papers real quick as the final item I have on the list here? I think
Aaron looks shocked.
Yeah, he looks shocked. I think I'll jog your memory though. It was mostly we were just talking about how the blue papers are going to change. Like the recommendations in the blue papers are going to change so much that I think you were kind of talking about this before we started.
I think I touched on that a little bit when I was talking about my update with account creation and like the efforts that I can do with a Eden budget versus like, okay, let's make a real proposal that is for all EOS.io networks and do that kind of thing. But yeah, there is a lot in these papers that could fundamentally change the direction that we've been on for the past couple of years. 2 of the papers are like post-processing at this point and will be ready, and 2 of them are still being finished with still being the release, but each one of them just contains so many ideas that could potentially alter how we build applications and how we move this chain forward and how we interact with other blockchains. It's a lot of people that have been around for a long time and just been watching these problems exist without solutions. And now it's time to bring those solutions up in a hopefully a meaningful way So that way things like all the foundations from all the various chains can look at these and be like, yeah, that would help us. External businesses that have tried to build on EOS.io but ran into a roadblock could point at something and be like, yeah, that would have solved our problem. And groups like us can look at this stuff and think about how it could impact processes like Eden and make this process better. It's a chance to do this big conversation and retrospective on how we do things today and how we could do them better tomorrow. There's going to be a lot to talk about when these come out, and hopefully everybody engages. I don't envy whoever has to translate these things. It can be dense and they are long.
Yeah, and
So
technical.
we tried to remove a lot of the technical just because most people aren't going to want to read it, but it exists. I mean, there's hundreds of pages of content that you probably won't even see in the blue papers that is just going to exist because it didn't fit in that paper. But then once somebody engages and asks a question about that thing, we have just this archive of content that we've written that we can go in and be like, okay, what did we think about this? And like pull a chunk out, write a blog post or something. It's going to be that sort of back and forth engagement after they are released. And we'll probably do that for a while before a grander vision is set. Let's finish the papers and then we'll talk about rants. You guys get my rants now. They get all bottled up all week. And then we all get on this call and inevitably like a topic comes up that I'll rant about. Oh no, we're in the weeds on this.
Yes, indeed we are. Anyone have any words of wisdom to close this out besides stay out of the weeds?
I want to know, you said that first you'd have to get in the mood to do the editing. What do you mean by that?
Well, I can say as somebody that worked in Hollywood for a little while in the industry, a lot of people will use cannabis when they do the time stamping portion of editing. Sit down, because it's hours of sitting there, and you notice things that you might not otherwise notice. Now, for the actual editing portion, don't use the cannabis. Bad idea.
It's only useful when you need to slow down time.
Exactly. When you need to slow down time, it's very helpful. Otherwise, for getting the actual work done, not recommended. Unless you're a rare human being.
Not financial advice.
Not financial advice. Not health advice. Nothing of that. No.
It's not advice at all.
No. Did I say anything? I don't know if I said anything. Well, watch Chuck have fun with clips on that section. Oh man.
Kind of tying back a couple topics we've hit on, the whole are you going to run into the next election thing? Like for a long time now, I've been thinking like I probably wouldn't participate again. But one thing I was looking forward to the next election is being part of the group that's just like there helping the operation go on. And, like Mike and the crew as they were around in the main channel and like hanging out with almost the audience that wasn't participating. Like
a mentor.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, be like a mentor, right?
Yeah. Just like you're like a volunteer at a polling place at that point, just seeing how things unfold, except it's this interconnected crazy process that's a big experiment and probably isn't inside like a fire station or something.
But could be yeah, I like that idea. All right guys, let's call it a night, shall we?
Sounds good.
Good meeting.
All right, guys. Have a great
Yep.
day.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks for showing up. Go EOS.
Go, yes.
And we'll see you all next time.